Good day, you are welcome to my channel. This is Kevin Davis Accounting. So today I'd like us to look at cost segregation and estimation. And majorly we are going to put our emphasis on the high-low method. You know, we can use quite so many methods for us to segregate costs. We can use the regression method, but now today I would like us to go by the high-low method. So usually you're going to be given the activity levels or the output levels. Sometimes they could be labor hours, anything they have given us output. Now, and they're going to give you the corresponding costs attached to those output levels or the labor hours. So remember I told you that mixed costs, these are costs which have the variable cost component and then the fixed cost component. So we are supposed to separate those costs, the total cost, into fixed cost and then variable cost. So there's a certain procedure that we are supposed to follow for us to come to that. Now, let me just give you a few simple steps that we are going to use. One, the very first one is you establish the variable cost per unit. This is the very first thing. Then two, you establish the total fixed cost. And then lastly, you establish the total cost function. So with this, you can actually separate and then also estimate future costs that you should be associated with this given output. Now, the very first thing here that we have to put emphasis on, because if you don't know it, then you cannot start to attempt such a number. Now, variable cost per unit is something that we are supposed to first establish. Now, if you don't know how to establish the variable cost per unit, you cannot even start acting on this number or working out. Now, for us to find the variable cost per unit, I'm going to show you something here. So, let me just call them steps. For variable cost per unit. So remember, we want to find the variable cost per unit. So remember I told you that they're going to give you the output levels, okay? And then these output levels are going to be associated with certain costs. That means there will be corresponding costs that will be tagged onto these output levels. Now, the very first thing is identify the highest and lowest activity levels. Now, they are going to give you quite a number of activity levels. They could be 7, they could be 8, 10. But now, the first instruction tells us that you identify the highest and lowest. Now we are doing the high-low method. Now, you identify the activity levels, not the cost, but the activity levels. Now, when you identify the activity levels, one, you're going to identify the highest and the lowest. Okay? So after that, after us identifying the highest and the lowest activity levels, you identify the costs associated with the highest and lowest activity levels. So it means after us identifying this, then later on we are going to find the costs which are being associated with the highest and lowest activity levels. Let me just give you an example. We can have here our output, and then shall have here our total costs. Okay, maybe we have output when let me say 500, so our total cost is let me say our total cost maybe is 2000. Okay, this is period. Okay, let me just put the periods. Then we can have output as 200, and our total cost is 1200. Okay, we can have 700, and our total cost probably could be 2400. Okay, then last we could have, let me say 1000, and our total cost is 4,000. Okay, so maybe I'm just giving an example that they've given us the output levels. Okay, now from what we have said here, they've said identify the highest and lowest activity levels. Now from here you can actually see that our highest is this, and our lowest is this. So that means the rest we don't need them. We only need the highest and the lowest. So the lowest is 200 and the highest is 1000. So that means we have identified the highest and lowest activity levels. Then the next says that identify the costs that are associated with the highest and lowest activity levels. Now, the cost for this is actually this, you see, and then the cost for this is this. So these are the costs that are associated with the highest and the lowest activity level. So this is what I'm talking about, that they're going to give you a list of output levels, and then they're going to give you associated costs to those output levels. So your role for you, what you're supposed to do is to identify the highest activity level and the lowest activity level. Then you find the associated costs or the corresponding total costs that are tagged to those activity levels. I hope now that's very understandable. Then, after that, we go to the third. Okay, now the third is subtract costs associated with lowest activity level from cost associated or corresponding associated with highest activity. So after us coming to, probably have seen the costs. Now after us establishing the costs which are associated, then we are going to take the difference. We are going to subtract the highest the cost which is associated with the highest activity level minus the cost which is associated with the lowest activity level. So you're going to get the difference. Then the fourth is subtract lowest activity level from highest activity level. Okay, now this was cost. Now this is the activity levels. So that means you're supposed to subtract the lowest activity level from the highest activity level. Then lastly, you're going to subtract, you're going to divide what is in 3 by what is in 4. So that means you're going to have the difference that you're going to get here, you're going to divide it by the difference that you have here, and then later on you have what they call the variable cost per unit. So these are the steps that we are going to follow for us to establish the variable cost per unit. I know right now it might not be very easy with the eye, but later on it's going to come out. Now, Ideally, this, what I'm talking about here, has a certain formula. So you can say variable cost per unit. Okay, it could be, you say cost high cost minus low cost, or cost of high minus cost of low, then you say high minus low. Now, these ones are the cost associated and these ones are the activity levels. So I think I'm going to take a question on this and I will show you how it will help us and how it will form up. But it is a very, very easy topic to do. So allow me to rub off this, then we attempt a certain question. So the question says, Mark Company Limited has recorded the following costs in the past 6 months. So they've given us the month, they've given us production units, they've given us total costs in Ugandan shillings. So in the month of January, there was a production of 5,800 and the total cost was 40,300. In the month of February, we had the production units of 7,700 and then the total cost of 47,100. Then in the month of March, we had production units of 8,200 and then we had total costs of 48,700. In the month of April, we had production units of 6,100 and then the total costs of 40,600. In the month of May, we had production units of 6,500 and then total costs of 44,500. Then in the month of June, we had production units of 7,500 and we had total costs of 47,100. Now, the question is saying you are required to use high-low method to estimate the total cost equation. So that's the question that we are going to attempt, and I believe it's going to become very, very easy. So from the question one, we are going to establish of course, we are going to have the highest and the lowest, okay? Now, if you check back in the question, you can realize that the highest activity level is in the month of March, and it's 8,200, and then the associated cost is 48,700. Okay, now let's do this. You're going to find the highest. Okay, so our highest was in the month of March and was highest activity level. If you check back, it was 8,200. 8,200. Okay, and then the cost associated with it, it is 48,700. It is 48,700. Okay, now let us look for the lowest activity level and the cost associated. Now, if you check, our lowest activity levels in the month of January, it is 5,800. 5,800, and then the associated cost is 40,300. 40,300. So this is what we have done now. After us identifying the highest level and the lowest level, the rest we don't need them. Okay, we only have to take this because it's what we are going to use. So this is what we have. This is our highest and this is our lowest activity level. Now, if you check back in the question, they were saying you are required to use the high-low method. The high-low method to calculate, to estimate the total cost equation. Now, we're going to first, from what I said, from our steps, I said the very first step is to establish the variable cost per unit. The variable cost per unit. Okay, and I said the variable cost per unit is going to be the cost associated with high minus cost associated with low. So cost associated with high is this. So you come here and say 48,700 minus cost associated with low, which is 4,300. Then I say divide by the highest minus the lowest. So you shall have 8. Okay, so that's where we are now. So when we get that difference here, we are going to get this is 8,4. Then subtract this, you're going to get 2,400. Yes. Okay. So when you divide this by this, now after us making this, we have got this. After us subtracting this, we have got this. So another total figure will be Ugandan shillings 3.5 per unit. So that's what we have. Okay. Now this is our variable cost per unit. Now, after us establishing our variable cost per unit, remember the equation is total cost equals to fixed cost plus variable costs. But now you know very well that variable cost, from my introduction, I say that variable cost is equal to variable cost per unit multiplied by the quantity. So you're going to say our total cost equals to fixed cost plus our, here you're going to have our quantity times variable cost per unit. Okay, now this is what we have. Now remember I told you amongst the steps, the very first step was to establish the variable cost per unit. Then I told you the next step should be for us to establish what we call the fixed cost. Now the fixed cost component is what we need to find. Now already we have the variable cost per unit is already there. We have the output and then we have the total cost. Now look at this. We are going to choose one of the two. We are either going to take this or this, okay? So you choose, you can go the highest, you can use the lowest. Now, allow me to take the lowest. So when I take the lowest, so you're going to say our total cost equals to fixed cost plus our quantity times variable cost per unit. Now the total cost here that we had is this, because I'm taking the lowest level, it is this. So you come here and say 40. Okay, now the fixed cost we don't know, it's what we are calculating for. So we say fixed cost, then plus the quantity. The quantity now becomes the production unit or the output level. So it becomes the what? The quantity. We shall have 5,800. Then multiplied by the variable cost per unit, which you have just calculated here, which is 3.5. Okay, then after us here doing this, we make change of subject, and our fixed cost will be 20,000, of course, Ugandan shillings. Okay, so that's our fixed cost. So remember from our steps, one, you're already done with the variable cost per unit, then you have also established the fixed cost. Now the question was telling us, if you check back in the question, it was telling us we are required to use the high-low method to estimate the total cost equation. Now that means we are supposed to generate the cost equation, the total cost equation. Now, us having this fixed cost, remember I told you it is cost segregation and estimation. Now we have segregated cost, but now later on in the future we can use this to estimate cost. For example, if you want to produce a given amount of quantity or a given production unit, that means we shall need to say, okay, if this is the cost that we are going to be giving or giving out, how much will it cost us to produce such amounts of units? So our total cost equation will be still total cost equals to fixed cost plus RQ, which is the quantity times the variable cost per unit. Okay, now the total cost will be We have the fixed cost, which is 20,000, then plus the Q now we don't know, because later on we don't know what we shall use, how many production units we shall give out, so we might not be knowing now. So we shall just get the production units that we want and we place here. So another variable cost per unit is what? Is 3. So we shall have 3.5 Q. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call the total cost equation. So later on, in future, just give you a question. They say, now, if the company wants to produce maybe 1,000 units, okay? If they want to produce 1,000 units, they will tell you, calculate how much total cost, how much it will cost them for them to produce 1,000 units. So just come and put 3.5 times 1,000 and then you establish your total cost. So that's how easy it is. So it's all about finding the highest and lowest activity levels, cost associated with them, and then you continue doing the number. It is a very, very easy thing. That's like you can see. So in case your understanding is not enhanced, I'm still going to solve another question. Just join me on in my next video. I'm going to do when there's a step up in fixed cost. So thank you so much for watching. This is Kevin Davis Accounting. Until we meet again, it's a bye for now.